Supreme Court were pretty clear yesterday in their conclusion that the government's plan on Rwanda was not lawful. But what about Rishi Sunak's comeback plan? Let's get the thoughts now of the father of previous Prime Minister Stanley Johnson, who joins us this morning. Good morning to you, Stanley. What do you make of what we heard from Prime Minister Sunak yesterday, trying to persuade us that these planes will indeed take off for Rwanda in the spring?
Well, I think he's right. He has to stick to his guns here. You've been talking about David Cameron. As you were talking about it, I was thinking back to David and Cameron's 2010 manifesto. And what did he say? Keep migration down to the tens of thousands. In fact, he went on to say he didn't want to see a population in this country above 70 million. Well, where are we now? We're 63 million. We've had a 60% growth, 60% of population growth in recent years has been due to immigration. There is a wider issue here, apart from the local and immediate issue. And the wider issue is we do have to keep immigration under control. The Tories were committed to do that, tens of thousands. How far away are we from that? So yes, Mr. Sunak is right. He has to stick to his guns here. This is, as it were, the Australian model. Set up something. Do not encourage people to come here. They won't come here. I don't like the use of the word illegal immigration. That is perhaps the wrong concept. We have to look at immigration in the round, and it has to come down.
Tell me, though, how exactly you think the flights will take off. I mean, we heard from the Supreme Court yesterday, and this is a justice who is not left-wing by any stretch of the imagination, saying that Rwanda was frankly not a safe country. He wasn't confident that there wasn't this risk of refoulement or défoulement, which returning refugees to their original country. If the Supreme Court says that Rwanda's not safe, how does a new treaty or an emergency piece of legislation here in the UK change that?
I think all we can do at the moment is stick to our guns to say we do have to get immigration under control. We have to take whatever means we can do that. We have to say, at the end of the day, maybe we have to look again at some of the language in the treaties we have signed up to. It's not just the committee, the Convention on Human Rights. So I think, honestly, we have to say it has worked. This policy of discouragement did work in the case of Australia. We have to make it work here.
What do you make of Suella Braverman in all of this? Do you think she's played a blinder? It's been a good week for her, or do you think it's been a bad week? I mean, in many ways, what she said in her letter, irrespective of the choice of language, appears to be true on the surface of it. What do you think?
Well, I think she was 100% right. To pick on this figure of 235,000 or whatever it was she said. I mean, there has to be a firm number. Go back, if you like, to the 2019 manifesto. What was the heart of that? Was to make the Australian system work. And that, of course, is something which is now in place. It has to work. What we do have to do is to deal with this question of asylum. Of course, everybody has a right to seek asylum. What we need to do is to find a system for actually assessing these asylums. And that's why I come back to what I believed for a very long time. We have to work very closely now with our European partners here. The EU did set up a system called Frontex. There was a system for assessing immigration, and that wouldn't necessarily have to be in this country. We have to work with them. I think we need to, as soon as Mr. Cameron comes in, I think he needs to sit down and say, we do want to be back as a part of the EU-wide system. Otherwise, we shall simply be, how should I call it, spitting in the dark.
Gosh, but what would the right of the party say about that?
The right of the party will have to realise that the wider issue is to see that the UK's immigration problem is only part of a much larger European problem. And unless you solve the larger European problem, and that in turn, by the way, is part of the worldwide problem. Of course, I'm speaking now as an environmentalist. What are they doing? They are responding to the fact of all sorts of pressures which have arisen, not just the bad government pressures, but also the environmental pressures which have resulted over the last 20 or 30 years from climate change issues and so on and so forth. So yes, there's no way we can solve the migration issue by purely acting alone. We have to work with our European partners, and we probably have to work also in the context of the foreign aid program. And of course, David Cameron was particularly powerful on that. If you remember, it was David Cameron who pushed through the 0.7 manifesto commitment, which we attained, by the way.
Well, I know you and your son take different views on certain matters, but obviously as a family you lived through the whole experience of seeing Boris Johnson, all the votes of no confidence going through. There were lots of whisperings about similar happening to Rishi Sunak yesterday. Do you think that his press conference at 4:45 last night has done enough to appease the wing of the party who are agitating to see these planes take off?
I love that. I cannot see any appetite in the Tory party for another brutal assassination, which is what we saw in the case of Boris. So I think that Mr. Sunak is going to be fairly confident that he will survive until the next election, and who knows, he may win it.